I am Leo, and I am 35 years old. 3 nights ago, my wife of 5 years looked at my best friend across our dining table and announced she would leave me for him in a heartbeat. She thought it was a hilarious joke. When I finally reacted, my mother-in-law actually had the nerve to tell me I should have just laughed it off, that I needed to work harder to afford the lifestyle her daughter deserved. But there is one thing they did not know. I was not just the boring, dependable ATM they took for granted. I had access to every single financial record. I secured the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the city, and they were about to face a lawsuit that would strip away every delusion of grandeur they had. And now, she is working a minimum wage job, living in a basement, and begging for a second chance. Before I tell you exactly how I dismantled her perfect little life, please hit that like button if you believe in justice and respect. And do not forget to let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Now, let us go back to the night the illusion completely shattered. It was a Friday night in late autumn. Our dining room smelled of expensive catered salmon and the heavy, oaky red wine my wife, Mia, insisted we buy to impress our guests. The crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, and the silver cutlery was perfectly aligned on the linen tablecloth. We were hosting a celebration dinner for my best friend, Caleb, and his beautiful new fiancée, Sarah. Everything looked picture perfect. But if you have lived long enough, you know that perfection is usually just a very thin layer of paint over a rotting foundation. Mia was 33, and lately, she had been obsessed with the idea of being an influencer. She did not have a job. She spent her days curating her Instagram feed, buying designer clothes on my credit cards, and complaining that our suburban home did not have the right aesthetic for her videos. That night, she had been drinking heavily. Not enough to be slurring her words or stumbling around the kitchen, but just enough to completely erase whatever social filter she normally possessed. We were halfway through the main course. Caleb reached over, gently squeezed Sarah's hand, and smiled. He told us how lucky he felt to have found someone so grounded, someone who understood the value of building a life together. It was a genuine, heartfelt moment. Then Mia cleared her throat. The sound was loud and sharp, cutting right through the warmth of the room. She leaned back in her upholstered chair, swirling the dark red wine in her glass, and locked her eyes right on my best friend. She smiled. It was that specific arrogant smirk I had grown to absolutely despise over the last 2 years. She looked at Caleb and said the words that would ultimately end our marriage. You know, Caleb, you better hold on to Sarah really tight, because I swear, if I were single right now, I would trade Leo in for you in a heartbeat. Hell, I would probably leave him for you before the dessert even hits this table. The entire room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. The air felt like it had been sucked out of the space. Caleb looked completely horrified, his hand freezing over his plate. Sarah went pale, her eyes darting from Mia to me. Mia just laughed. It was a loud, booming laugh that echoed off the walls of the house I worked 60 hours a week to pay for. She looked around the table, waiting for us to join in. She expected Caleb to be flattered. She expected Sarah to be submissive. And most of all, she expected me to force a smile, play the role of the good sport, and validate her cruelty as harmless humor. For 5 years, I was the peacemaker. I was the guy who smoothed things over. I would swallow my pride, make an excuse for her behavior, and apologize to everyone else. But sitting there, watching her revel in my public humiliation, something inside me broke. It was not a loud explosion. It was a quiet, definitive snap. It was the realization that I was sitting across from a person who genuinely hated me, but loved what my salary provided. I did not yell. I did not throw my wine glass against the wall. I simply stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, making everyone jump. "Leo?" Mia asked. She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God. Where are you going? Can you really not take a simple joke? You are always so sensitive." I did not say a single word. I walked out of the dining room, walked straight down the hallway, and went into our master bedroom. My heart was pounding fiercely against my ribs, but my hands were completely steady. I walked into her massive walk-in closet. I pulled her large, hardshell Samsonite suitcase down from the top shelf and threw it open on the bed. I did not carefully fold her clothes. I walked to her dressers and grabbed handfuls of her expensive silk blouses, her designer jeans, and her ridiculous lingerie. I shoved it all into the suitcase. I went into the master bathroom, swept my arm across the vanity, and knocked her $200 face creams, her makeup palettes, and her toothbrush straight into her designer tote bag. I zipped the main suitcase shut with a violent tug. I grabbed the heavy handle and dragged it down the hallway. The wheels rumbled aggressively against the floorboards. When I walked back into the living room, Caleb and Sarah were standing near the front door, looking deeply uncomfortable. Mia was still sitting at the table, taking another sip of wine. I lifted the heavy suitcase and dropped it right onto the living room rug. The loud thud made the silverware rattle on the dining table. Mia lowered her glass. She looked at the suitcase, then looked up at me with genuine confusion. "What is this?" she asked, a nervous laugh escaping her throat. "Are we going on a surprise vacation?" I walked up to the edge of the table. I looked down at the woman I had supported through her endless phases, her failed business ventures, and her relentless demands. I felt absolutely nothing. The love was completely gone. "You said you would leave me for Caleb if you had the chance," I said. My voice was dangerously calm. I pointed directly at the heavy oak front door. "Here is your chance. Take it. Get out of my house." Mia stared at me. Her mouth fell open. She looked at Caleb, hoping he would jump in and defend her, hoping he would tell me I was overreacting. Caleb just looked at the floor, shaking his head in disgust. "You are embarrassing yourself in front of our guests." "Leo," she hissed, her face turning bright red. "Sit down. It was a joke. You are acting completely psychotic." "I am not sitting down," I told her. "And I am not the one embarrassing myself. You disrespected me. You disrespected our marriage. You disrespected my best friend and his fiancée in my own home. Grab your bag and leave, or I am calling the police to have you removed." She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward. "Fine," she screamed, her mask completely slipping. "You want me to go? I will go to my mother's house. But do not expect me to answer the phone when you realize how pathetic and lonely you are without me. You are nothing without me, Leo." She grabbed the handle of the suitcase and stormed toward the front door. She slammed it so hard the framed pictures in the hallway rattled against the drywall. I walked over to the door and turned the deadbolt. The sharp click echoed in the silent house. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I had drawn the line, but as I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, I had no idea that kicking her out was just the beginning of the nightmare. I thought the worst was over. I was so incredibly wrong. After Caleb and Sarah left, apologizing profusely for a situation that was entirely not their fault, the house grew deafeningly quiet. I sat alone on the living room sofa, the only light coming from the street lamps outside the large bay windows. The adrenaline was slowly leaving my bloodstream, replaced by an exhausted, hollow ache. I stared at the empty space where her suitcase had been just an hour before. My mind started drifting back, playing a highlight reel of the last 5 years. Sitting in the dark, I was finally forced to admit a terrifying truth. Tonight was not an isolated incident. Tonight was just the eruption of a volcano that had been building pressure since the day we got married. Mia had always possessed a cruel streak, but she disguised it as brutal honesty. She called it keeping me grounded. I called it surviving a daily emotional beating. The silence of the house triggered a memory so vivid I could almost smell the roasted turkey. It was Thanksgiving dinner last year. My parents were there. Her parents, Richard and Evelyn, were there. I had spent 3 days preparing the house, doing the grocery shopping, and dealing with the chaos while Mia was upstairs doing her makeup for 3 hours. Caleb had stopped by briefly that afternoon to drop off a bottle of whiskey for me. He looked sharp, wearing a tailored coat, fresh off closing a major real estate deal. Mia had watched him pull away in his brand new car from the living room window. Later, while we were sitting around the Thanksgiving table, My father asked me how my job at the financial firm was going. I was about to answer when Mia interrupted. Leo is doing fine, she announced to the entire table, twirling her fork. But you know who is really killing it? Caleb. He just bought a second investment property. I keep telling Leo he needs to be more aggressive, more ambitious like Caleb. But Leo just likes playing it safe in his little cubicle. I guess some men are just built to be worker bees. Right, Mom? Her mother, Evelyn, had simply smiled and nodded, taking a sip of her wine. It is important for a man to provide the right lifestyle, Evelyn had chimed in. I remember the burning shame that flooded my chest that day. My parents looked deeply uncomfortable. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. But instead of defending myself, instead of demanding respect in my own home, I forced a tight smile. I swallowed the humiliation. I told myself she was just pushing me to be better. I rationalized the abuse because confronting it meant admitting my marriage was a failure. Over the years, she systematically dismantled my self-esteem piece by piece. If I bought a new suit for work, she would look me up and down and say it made my shoulders look narrow. If I cooked dinner, she would complain that it was too bland and order expensive sushi on my credit card. She made me feel like my value was solely determined by my paycheck and my ability to tolerate her disrespect. The biggest irony of it all was our financial dynamic. I was a senior financial analyst. I made a very strong salary. I funded her entire life. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, her car insurance, and her ridiculous monthly clothing hauls. Mia had not held a steady job in 4 years. She claimed she was building her brand. She claimed she was an entrepreneur. But her business consisted of posting photos of herself at luxury coffee shops and complaining about how exhausted she was. She acted like she was the ultimate prize. She operated under the delusion that her mere presence in my life was a privilege I had to continually pay for. And the tragedy was, she had manipulated me into believing it too. I lay down on the sofa, staring at the ceiling. The financial reality of a divorce began to weigh on me. I thought about the house. I thought about my 401k. I thought about the joint savings account we had been slowly building for future emergencies and a potential college fund if we ever had children. I knew the legal battle would be brutal. Her parents were wealthy, and Richard, her father, had always treated Mia like the golden child who could do no wrong. They would hire vicious lawyers. They would try to take everything from me. But as the first rays of dawn started filtering through the blinds, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The fear of losing money was nothing compared to the slow, agonizing death of losing my dignity. I was 35 years old. I had half my life ahead of me. I refused to spend another decade shrinking myself to fit into the tiny box Mia had built for me. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the heavy silence of the house was shattered by a loud, aggressive pounding on the front door. I jumped off the couch. My muscles were stiff from sleeping on the cushions. The pounding continued, rapid and demanding. It was not the doorbell. It was the sound of a fist hitting solid wood. I assumed it was Mia, coming back to demand entry, ready to put on a performance of tears and apologies to get back into her comfortable life. I walked to the door, my jaw clenched. I looked through the peephole. It was not Mia. It was my older sister, Claire. And standing right behind her were Caleb and Sarah. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Claire did not even say hello. She marched right past me into the foyer, holding a massive tray of coffees and a paper bag full of breakfast sandwiches. Claire is 40 years old, a high school principal, and a woman who possesses zero tolerance for nonsense. She is the kind of person who takes command of a room the second she enters it. "I got your text last night," Claire said, setting the coffees down on the kitchen island with a loud thud. "You finally kicked the parasite out. It is about damn time. I brought breakfast, and I already have a locksmith scheduled to be here in exactly 45 minutes. You are not letting her back in." I managed a weak, exhausted smile. "I'm not letting her back in, Claire. I'm done." Caleb and Sarah walked into the kitchen. Caleb looked terrible. He looked like he had not slept a single minute. He stood awkwardly by the counter, gripping his jacket. Leo, Caleb started, his voice heavy with guilt. I am so sorry about last night. I should have shut her down immediately. I should have yelled at her. I froze. I didn't want to make a scene in your house. It's not your fault, Caleb, I told him, pouring myself a cup of black coffee. It was her choice to say those things. You have nothing to apologize for. Sarah stepped forward. She crossed her arms, her face tight with a mixture of anger and anxiety. Leo, he does have something to apologize for. Or at least something he needs to confess. Because last night wasn't just a drunk joke. It wasn't just Mia being mean. I stopped pouring the coffee. I looked from Sarah to Caleb. What are you talking about? Caleb ran a hand over his face, looking physically sick. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. His hands were actually shaking. I wanted to tell you, Caleb whispered, staring at the floor. I swear to God, Leo, I wanted to tell you months ago. But Sarah and I kept thinking she would stop. We didn't want to ruin your marriage. We thought if we just ignored her, she would give up and focus on you. Focus on me? I asked, the confusion morphing into a cold dread spreading through my chest. Caleb, give me the phone. What are you talking about? Caleb unlocked his phone, opened his text messages, and slid the device across the granite countertop. Read them, Sarah said, her voice trembling with restrained fury. Scroll all the way to the top. Look at the dates. I picked up the phone. The contact name was simply Mia. I started reading. Within 5 seconds, my hands began to tremble. My vision blurred. The cold dread turned into a burning, suffocating wave of absolute betrayal. It wasn't just a few inappropriate texts. It was a massive, relentless campaign of harassment. It went back 6 entire months. June 14th, 2:30 p.m. Saw your new car in the driveway today. You look so good behind the wheel. Wish you were driving me around instead of sitting in Leo's boring sedan. July 22nd, 11:45 p.m. Leo is asleep on the couch snoring. He is so completely clueless. I'm lying in bed thinking about what you wore to the barbecue today. You know you deserve a real woman, right? Not someone uptight like Sarah. August 5th, 3:15 p.m. I am so bored with this life, Caleb. If you just gave me the word, I would pack my bags right now. We could leave. I am not joking. Tell me you want me. I kept scrolling. There were dozens of them. Pictures of her at the gym in tight clothing. Late night desperate pleas. Insults directed at me. Insults directed at Sarah. I looked at the timestamps. She had sent some of these messages while I was sitting right next to her on the couch watching movies. She had sent them while I was cooking her dinner. She had sent them from the passenger seat of my car while I drove her to her parents' house. I looked up at Caleb. My voice cracked. Did you ever encourage this? Did you ever reply? Never, Caleb said firmly, stepping forward to look me dead in the eye. Leo, look at my replies. I swear on my life. I looked back down at the screen. Caleb's responses were scarce, brief, and brutally cold. Stop texting me, Mia. This is wildly inappropriate. Respect your husband. If you message me again, I am showing this to Leo. But she never stopped. She just kept pushing, convinced her delusional reality was the only one that mattered. Claire snatched the phone out of my hands. She quickly scanned the messages, her eyes widening in sheer horror. The protective older sister instinct took over instantly. Oh my God, Claire breathed out. She looked at Caleb. Send every single one of these screenshots to my phone right now. Do not delete a single comma. Why? Caleb asked, looking confused. Because, Claire said, her voice dropping into a lethal, dangerous tone. This is no longer just a messy divorce. This is a tactical war. She is going to try to paint Leo as the villain. She is going to run to her daddy, Richard, and cry that Leo was emotionally abusive. These texts are our ammunition. We are going to bury her. I stood there in my kitchen, holding onto the edge of the counter to keep from falling over. The woman I had vowed to protect, the woman I had given 5 years of my life and the vast majority of my salary to, had been actively trying to destroy my best friend's relationship so she could upgrade her lifestyle. Suddenly, my own cell phone buzzed violently on the island counter. The caller ID flashed on the screen. It was Evelyn, my mother-in-law, the woman who enabled every single toxic trait Mia possessed. Claire looked at the phone. She looked at me. "Do not answer that. Let it go to voicemail." "No," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. It was cold. It was detached. I reached out and grabbed the phone. "I am going to answer it, because the rules of this game just changed." I swiped the screen and put the phone on speaker for everyone to hear. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of their downfall, and I was about to lay the first brick. "Leo, what on earth is wrong with you?" Evelyn's shrill, demanding voice blasted through the speakerphone, filling my kitchen. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was doing. She went straight on the offensive just like she always did. "Mia arrived here last night sobbing uncontrollably," Evelyn continued, her tone dripping with condescension. "She said you completely lost your temper over a harmless little joke at dinner and threw her out into the street like a stray dog. Have you lost your mind? You do not treat my daughter this way. You need to drive over here immediately, apologize to her, and bring her home." Richard is furious. I looked around my kitchen. Claire was glaring at the phone, her arms crossed tight. Caleb and Sarah were standing silently, watching me. I took a deep, steadying breath. For years, I had cowered before Evelyn's demands. I had twisted myself into knots trying to please her and her arrogant husband, Richard. But standing there, armed with the knowledge of Mia's severe betrayal, their perceived authority over me vanished into thin air. "I am not apologizing, Evelyn," I said, keeping my voice remarkably level. "And I am certainly not bringing her back to this house. She does not live here anymore." There was a stunned pause on the other end of the line. Evelyn was not used to being defied. "Excuse me?" she snapped. "Listen to me very carefully, Leo. You are overreacting because your ego is bruised. You have always been terribly insecure. If you were half the man you are supposed to be, if you actually paid attention to her needs and provided the lifestyle she deserves, she wouldn't need to make jokes about finding a real man. This is your failure, not hers." The sheer audacity of her statement hung in the air. She was blaming me for her daughter's infidelity and cruelty. I leaned closer to the phone. "Evelyn, let me make this incredibly clear so there is no misunderstanding. I have funded your daughter's life for 5 years. I paid off her credit card debt when we got married. I bought the clothes she wears. I paid for the phone she used to send hundreds of text messages to my best friend, begging him to run away with her." "What?" Evelyn gasped, the hostility in her voice faltering for a split second. "That is a lie. Mia would never." "I have the screenshots, Evelyn," I interrupted, my voice slicing through her denial. "Months of them. She wasn't making a joke last night. She was angry that Caleb rejected her for the 50th time. Your daughter is a manipulative, delusional parasite. You and Richard created her, so now you get to deal with her. Do not ever call this number again. The next time you hear from me, it will be through my attorney." I ended the call before she could utter another syllable. I tossed the phone onto the counter. The silence in the kitchen was thick, but it was not heavy anymore. Felt liberating. "That," Claire said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face, "was a work of art, but we don't have time to celebrate. If Mia is over there crying to her parents, Richard is going to unleash his lawyers on you by noon. We need to secure the perimeter." Claire was right. Richard was a wealthy, connected man who treated every conflict like a hostile corporate takeover. I needed representation, and I needed it yesterday. "I know a guy," Caleb said quietly, stepping forward. "Arthur Vance. He handled a massive commercial real estate lawsuit for my firm last year. He specializes in high-asset divorces. The man is a shark. He eats arrogant people like Richard for breakfast. I'll text him right now and call in a personal favor. We will get you in his office today." By 10 o'clock that morning, The locksmith had completely replaced the standard deadbolt on my front door with a high-security electronic keypad lock. I changed the code to something Mia could never guess. She was physically locked out of the property. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Claire and I were sitting in the pristine, glass-walled conference room of Arthur Vance's downtown law firm. Arthur was a man in his late 50s, wearing an immaculate tailored suit, with eyes that looked like they missed absolutely nothing. He listened silently as I laid out the events of the previous night, the history of the emotional abuse, and finally, I placed a printed stack of the text messages Caleb had provided onto the heavy mahogany table. Arthur picked up the transcripts. He read through the first page, his expression completely neutral. Then he flipped to the second page. A small, cold smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Well," Arthur said, tossing the papers back onto the table, "she has essentially handed us the keys to the castle." In this state, infidelity, even emotional infidelity documented this extensively, can severely impact the distribution of marital assets and eliminate any claim she might try to make for spousal support. "She will try for spousal support?" I said, rubbing my temples. "She hasn't worked in 4 years. She claims she gave up her career to support my goals. A judge will look at these texts and laugh her out of the courtroom," Arthur replied smoothly. "However, we need to move aggressively. Narcissists do not handle rejection well. When they lose control, they escalate. Have you checked your joint financial accounts this morning?" My stomach dropped. "No, I haven't even thought about the bank. My salary goes into a joint checking account, and we have a joint high-yield savings account. The savings should have around $90,000 in it. We were saving to buy a larger property." Arthur leaned forward, his demeanor shifting from relaxed to intensely focused. "Leo, open your banking app right now. In my experience, when a spouse realizes the marriage is over, the money is the first thing to grow legs and walk away." My hands shook slightly as I pulled my phone out and logged into the banking application. I navigated to the joint savings account. I stared at the screen. The numbers did not make any sense. I blinked hard, thinking the app was glitching. "What is it?" Claire asked, leaning over my shoulder. I felt the blood drain from my face. The room spun slightly. "It's gone," I whispered. "How much is gone?" Arthur asked sharply. $50,000, I said, my voice choking in my throat. "The balance is $40,000. She withdrew $50,000 over the last 3 months. "Let me see the transaction history," Arthur ordered. I handed him the phone. He scrolled through the recent activity. "Here we go. $10,000 withdrawn in August. $15,000 transferred to a private account in September. And $12,000 spent at a luxury watch boutique 3 weeks ago. Did you receive a Rolex recently, Leo?" "No." I felt physically sick. I haven't received a gift from her in years. "She bought a watch for Caleb," Claire realized, her eyes wide with shock. "She used your money to buy a bribe for the man she was trying to sleep with." "Oh my God. It gets worse," Arthur said, pointing at a recurring monthly charge that started 4 months ago. $2,500 a month to Velocity Exotics. "Do you own an exotic sports car, Leo?" I shook my head, completely bewildered. "No, I drive a Honda. Mia drives a small SUV." "Not anymore, apparently," Arthur said, typing rapidly on his laptop. He pulled up a web page and turned the screen toward us. It was a luxury car rental agency. Velocity Exotics specializes in long-term luxury leases. $2,500 a month is the exact rate for a late-model Porsche 911. The pieces slammed into place with sickening clarity. The influencer lifestyle. The photos of her holding a steering wheel with the Porsche crest that she posted online, which she claimed belonged to a business partner. She had used my hard-earned savings, the money I slaved away for, to secretly lease a luxury sports car to fake a wealthy lifestyle on the internet and impress my best friend. She had stolen my money to fund her delusions. A profound, violent anger replaced the shock. It was a cold, calculating rage. I had spent years worrying about our future, budgeting our groceries, and denying myself vacations, while she was actively bleeding my accounts dry to live out a fantasy. "She is a thief," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I want to press charges. I want her arrested for theft." "Technically, it is a joint account," Arthur explained, holding up a hand to calm me down. "The police will view this as a civil matter right now. But in divorce court, this is called dissipation of marital assets. It is a major offense. We will demand every single penny back in the settlement, and it will be deducted directly from her share of the home equity. But right now, we need to stop the bleeding." Arthur wrote down a list of instructions on a legal pad and slid it across the table. "You go to the bank immediately. You open an individual account in your name only. You transfer exactly 1/2 of the remaining balances from the joint checking and savings into your new account. Leave her half. Do not touch her half, or the judge will accuse you of financial abuse. Then you cancel every single credit card where she is an authorized user." "Can I do that?" I asked. "Won't that leave her with nothing?" "She has the remaining $40,000 in the savings account, plus whatever she siphoned off," Arthur said coldly. "She is not destitute. You are protecting your future assets. You are cutting off the parasite. Do it today." I stood up. I shook Arthur's hand. I was no longer a confused, heartbroken husband. I was a man on a mission to reclaim my life. We left the law office and drove straight to the main branch of my bank. I walked into the manager's office. Elena, the branch manager who had known me for years, took one look at my face and knew something was terribly wrong. I explained the situation briefly. She moved with ruthless efficiency. Within 30 minutes, new accounts were opened. The remaining funds were legally divided, and every single credit card bearing Mia's name tied to my credit line was permanently deactivated. I walked out of the bank and stood on the sidewalk next to Claire. The autumn air felt crisp and clean. "It's done," I said, looking at my phone. "She is cut off." Claire checked her watch. "It's 2 o'clock. Mia usually goes to that overpriced organic bistro for a late lunch with her fake friends right about now. The credit card decline is going to hit her like a freight train." I smiled. It was the first real smile I had worn in a very long time. But the war was far from over. Mia was a cornered animal, and cornered animals do not surrender. They attack. And her attack was going to bring the police directly to my doorstep before midnight. The explosion happened exactly 45 minutes later. I was sitting at my kitchen island, organizing a terrifyingly high stack of utility bills and mortgage statements into a binder, preparing everything for Arthur. My phone, which had been blissfully silent since the bank run, suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree. It was Mia. She was calling back to back. 3 missed calls. For missed calls. Then the text messages started flooding in, vibrating violently against the granite countertop. "What the hell did you do? My card was just declined at the restaurant. In front of everyone. Turn the cards back on right now, Leo. This is illegal. You are financially abusing me. Answer the phone, you coward." I read the messages as they popped up. I didn't feel a shred of guilt. I felt a deep, profound satisfaction. For 5 years, she had controlled my emotions, my schedule, and my wallet. Now, with a few clicks of a banker's keyboard, I had severed the puppet strings. Following Arthur's strict advice, I did not engage. I typed out a single, legally approved response. "All joint funds have been legally divided. Your access to my personal credit lines has been revoked. Direct all future communication regarding finances to my attorney, Arthur Vance." I attached Arthur's office number and hit send. Then, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. "She is losing her mind right now," Claire said, sipping a glass of water near the fridge. "But you know she is not going to just accept this. She is going to spin the narrative." Claire was prophetic. By 6 o'clock that evening, my phone started buzzing with notifications from different social media apps. Even though I was not directly looking at Facebook, friends and extended family members were texting me screenshots. Mia had gone nuclear on the internet. She posted a long, dramatic, multi-paragraph manifesto on her Facebook and Instagram accounts. She included a black and white photo of herself looking mournfully out a window. The post read, "It is with a completely shattered heart that I announce the end of my marriage. I have spent the last 5 years giving everything I have to a man who simply could not appreciate my light. Last night, in a fit of irrational, controlling rage, Leo threw me out of our home. Today, he illegally drained our bank accounts and canceled my credit cards, leaving me entirely destitute and unable to buy food. Financial abuse is real, and it is terrifying. I am staying with my parents while I try to rebuild my life from nothing. Please respect my privacy during this traumatizing time." Destitute. I laughed out loud, reading the screenshot Caleb had just forwarded me. She has over $40,000 sitting in the joint account I left her, plus whatever she stole for that ridiculous Porsche. "Look at the comments," Claire said, disgust lacing her voice. The comments section was a cesspool of enabling behavior. Her high society friends were rushing to her defense. "Stay strong, Mia. He is so intimidated by your success. Get a ruthless lawyer, honey. Take him for everything. I always knew there was something creepy about him. You are a survivor." "This is infuriating," I said, my grip tightening on the phone. "I want to post the text messages. I want to post the bank statements showing the Porsche lease. I want to expose her right now in front of all her fake friends." "No," Claire said sharply, slamming her hand down on the counter. "Do not let your ego cost you the war." Arthur said, "Let her talk. Let her build this massive public lie. Because when we drop the evidence in the mediation room, the lie is going to crush her. Silence is your best weapon right now." I forced myself to put the phone face down. Claire was right. Engaging with a narcissist in a public forum is like wrestling a pig in the mud. You both get dirty, but the pig likes it. I deactivated my social media accounts entirely. I removed her audience. By 10 o'clock that night, Claire had gone home to her own family, promising to keep her phone on loud. I was alone in the house again. The silence was absolute. I walked through the rooms, looking at the expensive, useless decorations Mia had cluttered the house with. The velvet pillows, the overpriced abstract art that meant nothing. I grabbed a garbage bag from the pantry and started throwing it all away. It felt like an exorcism. I was purging the house of her toxic energy. At 11:30 p.m., I was in the master bedroom, packing the last of her vanity items into a cardboard box to ship to her parents' house, when I heard the unmistakable crunch of gravel in the driveway. I froze. I turned off the bedroom light and walked quietly to the front window. I peered through the wooden blinds. A sleek, silver Porsche 911 was parked aggressively across the bottom of my driveway, blocking the garage. The driver's side door swung open, and Mia stepped out. She was wearing designer sweatpants and a massive, oversized hoodie. She looked frantic. She marched up the front walkway and tried to insert her key into the lock. When the key didn't fit into the new electronic keypad, she started jiggling the handle violently. "Leo!" she screamed, pounding her fists against the heavy wood. "Open this door. I know you are in there, you coward. You can't lock me out of my own house." I stood in the dark hallway, watching her shadow through the frosted glass sidelights. My heart beat heavily, but I wasn't scared of her anymore. I was disgusted. "I need my winter coats," she yelled, kicking the bottom of the door. "And I need the rest of my jewelry. Open the door, or I swear to God I am going to throw a rock through this window." I didn't utter a word. I pulled out my cell phone, dialed 911, and calmly asked for police assistance, stating that my estranged wife was trespassing, damaging property, and threatening to break windows. 10 minutes later, the flashing red and blue lights of 2 police cruisers illuminated the neighborhood, casting wild shadows across the living room walls. I watched as 2 officers stepped out and approached Mia on the porch. She immediately shifted gears. The aggressive, screaming woman vanished, replaced instantly by a weeping, fragile victim. I could hear her sobbing to the officers, playing the helpless wife just trying to get her clothes from her abusive husband. I unlocked the deadbolt and stepped out onto the porch. I handed the lead officer a folder containing the deed to the house, which was solely in my name, and the legal notice of separation Arthur had drafted that afternoon. "Officers," I said calmly, ignoring Mia's theatrical tears, "she does not live here. She has already removed her primary belongings. I have secured her remaining items in boxes in the garage, which her attorney can arrange to pick up during business hours. She is trespassing and causing a disturbance." The officer reviewed the documents. He looked at Mia, then pointed toward the silver Porsche. "Ma'am, this is a civil matter. You cannot force entry into the property. You need to leave immediately, or you will be arrested for disturbing the peace." Mia stopped fake crying. The realization that her tears held no power over the law hit her hard. She glared at me, her eyes burning with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You are going to pay for this, Leo," she hissed, pointing a manicured finger at me. "My father is going to destroy you. You are going to be left with absolutely nothing." "Drive safe, Mia," I replied, my voice steady and cold. "Nice car, by the way. I hope you enjoy the lease payments." I watched her stomp back to the Porsche, the engine roaring loudly as she sped out of the neighborhood. I went back inside and locked the door. The house was quiet again. I had won the skirmish, but as I walked back into the master bedroom to finish clearing out the closet, I made a discovery that would turn this messy divorce into a criminal nightmare. I thought I knew how low she could sink, but I was about to find out the true depths of her sickness. The morning after the police escorted Mia off my front porch, I woke up to a house that felt entirely different. For the first time in 5 years, the air was not thick with the anxiety of anticipating her next mood swing. I made myself a cup of black coffee and walked through the silent rooms. I had won the battle of the night, but the legal war was looming. Arthur had scheduled our first mediation session for the following Monday. He warned me that Mia and her high-priced lawyer would walk into that room expecting a fight over the house and my salary. They would walk in arrogant, expecting me to fold just like I always had. I needed to make sure our house was completely purged of her presence before I had to sit across a table from her. I headed back into the master bedroom and opened the double doors of the walk-in closet. Her side was mostly empty, save for a few boxes on the top shelf that I hadn't been able to reach the night before. I dragged a small step stool into the closet and climbed up. There were old shoe boxes, a stack of tax returns from a few years ago, and a dusty, dark gray box tucked all the way in the back corner. It was taped shut with heavy packing tape. I assumed it was just old receipts or maybe some college memorabilia she had kept. I pulled it down, sat on the edge of the bed, and grabbed a pair of scissors from the nightstand to slice through the thick tape. I opened the lid. There were no receipts. There were no innocent college souvenirs. Inside was a stack of loose photographs printed on regular printer paper and a small, worn black moleskine notebook. I picked up the photographs first. My brow furrowed in confusion. The images were grainy, clearly zoomed in from a significant distance. They were candid shots. I shuffled through them slowly, my heart beginning to pick up a strange, irregular rhythm. There was a photo of Caleb walking his golden retriever in the park. Another photo of Caleb getting into his car outside his real estate office. A photo of Sarah, Caleb's fiancée, sitting at a coffee shop patio, completely unaware she was being watched. These were not photos Mia had taken while we were all hanging out together. These were photos taken from inside a parked car, through a tinted window, or from across a busy street. My breath hitched in my throat. I dropped the photos onto the bedspread as if they were physically burning my hands. I reached into the box and picked up the black notebook. My fingers were trembling so violently I could barely fold back the cover. I turned to the first page. It was dated over a year and a half ago. August 12th. Caleb wore the navy blue suit today. He left his office at exactly 5:15 p.m. He stopped at the driving range. I parked 2 rows away. He looks so powerful when he swings. Why doesn't he ever look at me when Leo is around? I know he wants to. I swallowed hard. The saliva felt like sandpaper in my throat. I turned the page. October 3rd. Followed Sarah to the bridal boutique. She is looking at dresses. She is so plain. It makes me sick to my stomach. Caleb is only marrying her because it makes sense on paper. If Sarah were to suddenly disappear or get into an accident, he would realize I have been here the whole time. It went on and on. Page after agonizing page of detailed, obsessive logs. My wife, the woman who slept in this very bed with me, who ate the meals I cooked, who complained about her nails and her hair, had been actively stalking my best friend for nearly 2 years. She had documented his daily movements. She knew his routines better than he probably did. And far worse, she harbored deeply violent, terrifying fantasies about harming the woman he loved. This was not just a midlife crisis. This was not just a woman who liked the attention of other men. This was a predator. I felt a violent wave of nausea crash over me. I sprinted into the master bathroom and dry-heaved over the porcelain sink. I turned on the cold water and splashed it onto my face, gripping the edges of the counter until my knuckles turned completely white. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked pale, hollow, and terrified. How had I missed this? How could I have been so profoundly blind? I thought she was just a narcissist. I thought she was just greedy. But she was genuinely dangerous. I stumbled back into the bedroom, grabbed my cell phone, and called my sister. "Claire?" I gasped, the air struggling to reach my lungs. "Come to the house. Right now. Bring a heavy-duty Ziploc bag. You need to see this." When Claire arrived 20 minutes later, she took one look at my face and didn't ask a single question. I pointed to the bed. Claire walked over, put on a pair of rubber cleaning gloves she had grabbed from under my kitchen sink, and picked up the notebook. She read in total silence for 5 minutes. Her face drained of all color. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wide with sheer terror. "Leo," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This changes absolutely everything. This is not divorce court material. This is criminal. This is felony stalking." She was tracking them. She was fantasizing about running Sarah off the road. "I know," I said, burying my face in my hands. "Claire, what if I hadn't kicked her out? What if she actually acted on this? She had access to my car, my schedules. She could have done something horrific." "We are not going to think about the what-ifs," Claire said firmly, sliding the notebook and the photos into the large plastic bag. "We are going to secure this evidence. We are driving straight to Arthur's office. Right this second." We arrived at Arthur Vance's law firm without an appointment, but when Claire told his receptionist that it was a matter of life and death, Arthur pulled us into his private office immediately. I placed the plastic bag on his heavy desk. "I found this hidden in the back of her closet," I told him. Arthur put on a pair of reading glasses and carefully extracted the notebook. I watched as the veteran lawyer, a man who had seen every ugly side of human nature during his 30-year career, read the entries. I saw his jaw tighten. I saw his eyes narrow into dangerous slits. He closed the book gently and looked at me. The calm, composed divorce attorney was gone. He looked like a military general preparing to drop a nuclear bomb. "Leo, listen to me very carefully," Arthur said, his voice deadly serious. "Do not touch this notebook again. I am taking custody of it. We are making certified copies, and I am locking the original in my firm's vault. Can we use it in the mediation?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Can we stop her?" "We are not just going to stop her," Arthur said, leaning back in his leather chair. "We are going to annihilate her. We are going for a scorched earth victory. Her lawyer, Marcus, is a pompous idiot who thinks this is a standard high net worth divorce. He thinks they have the leverage because you are the primary earner. They are going to walk into that mediation room on Monday expecting you to hand over the keys to your life." Arthur smiled, but it was a terrifying smile. "Let them walk into the trap. Let them lay out all their arrogant demands. Let them feel the pride of thinking they have beaten you. And then we will close the steel jaws of the trap right on their necks." The rest of the weekend was a blur of nervous energy. Caleb and Sarah came over on Sunday evening. I had to tell them. I had to warn them. When Caleb read the copies of the notebook entries, he broke down in tears, pulling Sarah into his arms. horrified that he had inadvertently brought this danger into her life. I promised them both that by Monday afternoon, Mia would be permanently removed from our lives, legally restrained, and completely neutralized. Monday morning arrived. The sky was overcast, casting a gray, somber light over the city. I put on my best tailored suit. I stood a little taller. I was not walking into that building as a victim. I was walking in as an executioner. The mediation center was located in a sleek, modern high-rise downtown. The conference room was excessively air-conditioned, smelling of stale coffee, leather, and tension. I sat on one side of the massive mahogany table with Arthur beside me. He had a thick, black binder resting in front of him, and a small, opaque lockbox. Exactly at 10 o'clock, the heavy glass door swung open. Mia walked in, followed by her attorney, Marcus. Mia was dressed to play a very specific role. She wore a simple, elegant beige dress, minimal makeup, and an expression of profound, wounded dignity. She looked exactly like the victim she claimed to be on the internet. Marcus was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, flashing a gold Rolex, looking incredibly pleased with himself. Mia did not look at me. She sat down, folded her hands delicately in her lap, and stared at the blank notepad in front of her. "Let's get straight to the point, gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice booming with unearned confidence. He didn't even wait for the mediator to finish the introductory formalities. He unclasped his briefcase and slid a stack of heavy paper across the polished table. "My client has suffered immense emotional distress," Marcus stated, tapping his expensive pen against the wood. "She was wrongfully evicted from her marital home in the middle of the night. She was subjected to a sudden, vindictive financial cutoff that left her unable to secure basic necessities. Furthermore, Leo has engaged in a campaign of financial abuse by hiding assets just prior to this separation." I looked at Arthur. He didn't blink. He just let Marcus keep digging the grave. "Our demands are extremely reasonable given the circumstances," Marcus continued, handing a summary sheet to the mediator. "We are asking for 60% of the equity in the marital home. We are asking for spousal support in the amount of $5,000 a month for a period of 7 years, to allow Mia to reestablish her career after sacrificing it for Leo. We also demand that Leo assumes the entirety of the marital debt, and Mia retains full ownership and control of the Porsche 911 currently leased under the marital funds." I almost laughed out loud. Spousal support for a woman who spent her days taking selfies, and the Porsche she leased to impress the man she was trying to sleep with. The audacity was breathtaking. Arthur sat perfectly still, his hands folded neatly on top of his binder. He let the silence stretch out in the room for 10 long seconds, letting Marcus's ridiculous demands echo against the glass walls. "Are you quite finished, Marcus?" Arthur finally asked, his tone so polite it was actively insulting. Marcus puffed out his chest. "We are finished. Unless your client wishes to sign the settlement right now and save himself the embarrassment and cost of a brutal public trial." "Oh, we certainly want to settle," Arthur said smoothly. "But before my client signs anything, I think it is only fair we review the financial contributions your client has made to this marriage." Arthur opened the black binder. He pulled out the bank statements Elena had stamped and certified just 3 days prior. He slid them across the table. "Let the record show," Arthur said, his voice rising in volume and authority, "that Mia systematically drained $50,000 from a joint savings account over a period of 3 months. This money was used for non-marital pursuits. Specifically, a $12,000 luxury watch purchased for a man who is not her husband, and a secret luxury vehicle lease. In the state's eyes, Marcus, this is called the dissipation of marital assets. My client is legally entitled to every single cent of that money back, which immediately wipes out any claim she has to the equity of the house." Mia's head snapped up. Her victim facade cracked slightly. She looked at Marcus, panic flaring in her eyes. "He was hiding money from me," she lied quickly. "I had to secure my future." "Secure your future?" Arthur challenged, pulling a second stack of papers from the binder. Or secure a new partner? Arthur slid the thick packet of text messages across the table. These are certified transcripts of over 400 text messages your client sent to Leo's best friend, Caleb, over the last 6 months. They detail explicit sexual propositions, relentless harassment, and documented proof of her intention to abandon the marriage the moment a wealthier man accepted her advances. Mr. Caleb rejected her repeatedly, yet she persisted. This eliminates any possible justification for spousal support. She was not a supportive spouse sacrificing her career. She was an active liability. Marcus picked up the transcripts. His eyes darted back and forth across the pages. I watched the arrogant smirk completely melt off his face. A lawyer knows when a case is dead on arrival. He realized his client had lied to him about the nature of the separation. These are taken out of context, Marcus stammered, though his voice lacked any real conviction. Text messages are not grounds to leave a woman with absolutely nothing. You are right, Marcus, Arthur said, his voice dropping to a low, lethal whisper. Text messages do not leave a woman with nothing, but a felony conviction usually does. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Arthur reached over to the opaque lockbox. He unlocked it with a small key, reached inside, and pulled out the black moleskine notebook and the stack of grainy photographs. Mia gasped. It was a sharp, involuntary sound of pure terror. All the color drained from her face, leaving her looking like a ghost. Her hands began to shake violently on the table. Arthur did not slide the notebook across. He held it up. This is Exhibit A, Arthur announced to the room. This is a detailed stalking log kept by your client. It documents the daily movements, clothing, and private schedules of Caleb and his fiancée, Sarah, for nearly 2 years. It includes photographs taken from concealed locations. More importantly, it includes written, violent ideations regarding causing physical harm to Sarah. Marcus stared at the notebook. He looked at Mia. Mia, what is he talking about? What is that? Mia couldn't speak. She was hyperventilating, staring at the black book as if it were a loaded gun pointed directly at her chest. Stalking is a felony in this state, Marcus, Arthur continued mercilessly, especially given the threatening nature of these entries. Caleb and Sarah have already retained counsel and are prepared to file for a permanent restraining order and press criminal charges by 5 o'clock today. Arthur reached into the binder one last time. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and placed it gently in the center of the table. Here is our counteroffer, Arthur stated. Leo gets 100% of the house, his retirement accounts, and his savings. Mia receives 0 spousal support. She assumes the entirety of the debt for the Porsche lease she fraudulently initiated. She signs this divorce agreement right now, waiving her right to any future claims. Furthermore, she agrees to a permanent restraining order regarding Leo, Caleb, and Sarah. Marcus looked completely defeated. He turned to Arthur. You can't leave her destitute. The court frowns on an inequitable distribution that leaves a spouse on the street. Arthur leaned in close, his eyes locking onto Marcus. If she does not sign this paper right now, we walk out of this room. I take this notebook directly to the district attorney. We file the criminal charges. She won't be on the street, Marcus. She will be in a state penitentiary. Do you want me to read the entry from October 3rd out loud for the mediator to hear? No, Mia shrieked, tears streaming down her face. It was not fake crying this time. It was the desperate, ugly crying of a cornered predator realizing the trap had sprung. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Leo, please, you can't do this to me. We loved each other. I'm sick. Okay? I just need help. Please don't send me to jail. I looked into the eyes of the woman who had made my life a living hell, who had drained my finances, and who had planned to hurt the people I cared about most. You ruined your own life, Mia, I said, my voice steady and resolute. I am just taking out the trash. Sign the paper. Marcus didn't even try to negotiate. He pulled a heavy gold pen from his pocket and practically shoved it into Mia's trembling hand. Sign it, He hissed at his own client. "Sign it right now before they change their minds. You are legally indefensible." Her hand shook so badly she could barely form the letters of her own name. She signed the agreement. She signed away the house, the money, the comfort, and the lifestyle she thought she was entitled to. Arthur snatched the paper back immediately, checking the signatures. "We are done here. The paperwork will be filed with the judge this afternoon." I stood up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I walked out of that conference room, took the elevator down to the lobby, and pushed through the revolving glass doors into the bright afternoon sun. I took a deep breath of the city air. Tasted like absolute freedom. Let's pause for a moment. Thank you for staying with me this far. You're truly amazing. Please help me by liking the video and commenting the number 1 below so I know you've been here with me until this point. This not only helps more people discover this story, but also lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone. Your support is the greatest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. The divorce was finalized with record speed. Because Mia had signed the waiver of all assets under the threat of criminal prosecution, there were no drawn-out battles over the silverware or the furniture. But even though the legal battle was over, the social and familial fallout was just beginning. Mia's parents, Richard and Evelyn, were the cornerstone of her arrogance. They had financed her entitlement since childhood. Arthur and I knew that if they continued to protect her, she would never truly face the consequences of her actions. So Arthur executed the final part of our strategy. As a professional courtesy, Arthur sent a sealed package to Richard's office. It contained the finalized divorce decree, a summary of the squandered marital assets, and heavily redacted copies of the text messages and the Moleskine notebook. We removed the specific threats to protect Sarah's privacy, but left enough of the stalking details to paint a crystal-clear picture of Mia's severe psychological instability. I heard about the fallout a few days later through the grapevine of mutual family acquaintances. Richard, a man who built his life on reputation, honor, and public perception, opened that package and saw the indisputable proof that his golden child was a thief, a liar, and a criminal. The protective delusion he had maintained for 33 years shattered instantly. When Mia returned to their massive suburban estate that evening, expecting her mother to coddle her and her father to plot revenge against me, she was met at the front door by Richard. His face was like stone. He held the copies of the notebook in his hand. According to what filtered back to me, Richard didn't yell. He spoke with a quiet, terrifying authority. "I have spent my entire life building a legacy to pass down to you," Richard told her, dropping the papers at her feet. "I defended you when you failed. I blamed your husband when you complained. But I will not harbor a predator in my home. I will not have my name attached to this sickness." Evelyn had sobbed, begging Richard to be reasonable, to get Mia psychiatric help. But Richard was resolute. He handed Mia a cashier's check for exactly $500. It was enough for a few nights at a cheap motel. "You are no longer the beneficiary of my trust," Richard declared, blocking the doorway so she could not step inside. "You are going to learn how the real world works. You will get a job. You will pay for your own therapy. And you will not return to this property until you can prove you are a functioning, decent human being." He closed the heavy oak door in her face. The safety net was gone. The endless supply of money was gone. The enablers had finally opened their eyes. Back at my house, I was beginning the profound process of rebuilding. It is a strange feeling, standing in a home that used to be a war zone, suddenly realizing the war is over. The silence, which used to feel heavy and threatening, now felt expansive and healing. Claire came over that weekend. We spent 2 days physically erasing Mia from the property. We ripped up the expensive, gaudy rugs she had bought to impress her friends. We threw away the sheer curtains she insisted on having that let in too much light. I went to the hardware store and bought 5 gallons of a rich, warm, masculine blue paint. We spent hours painting over the sterile, hospital-white walls she had demanded. With every brushstroke, I felt a layer of trauma peeling away from my soul. But I knew that just painting the walls wasn't enough to fix what was broken inside my head. The damage of emotional abuse runs deep. I had been conditioned to believe that my worth was tied to my utility. I had been trained to apologize for taking up space. I needed professional help to untangle the wires Mia had crossed in my brain. I started seeing a therapist, an incredibly perceptive man named Dr. Harris. My sessions with him were grueling. We didn't just talk about the explosive end of the marriage. We dug into the subtle, quiet cuts that happened over 5 years. We talked about why I stayed. We talked about my own deeply ingrained need to be the fixer, the dependable guy who would sacrifice his own happiness to keep a broken system running. Dr. Harris gave me an assignment. "Leo," he said, sitting across from me in his quiet office, "I want you to write a letter to the 25-year-old version of yourself, the kid who was about to propose to her. Tell him what you know now." I went home that night, sat at the kitchen island, and opened a blank document on my laptop. The words poured out of me like water from a broken dam. "Dear Leo," I wrote, "you think that if you just love her hard enough, she will eventually respect you. You think that your endurance is a sign of strength. It isn't. You are allowed to demand respect. You are not a failure because someone else is incapable of loving you properly. Do not set yourself on fire to keep a narcissist warm. Your value is not determined by the size of your paycheck or your ability to tolerate abuse. Walk away. The fear of leaving is 1,000 times worse than the reality of freedom." Writing that letter changed my internal frequency. The shame that had been sitting heavy in my chest evaporated. I wasn't a victim who got tricked. I was a survivor who fought his way out of the dark. I was finally ready to start living. A year passed. Time really is the ultimate equalizer. It moves forward, relentlessly pulling you away from the wreckage of the past. Life found a new, wonderful rhythm. Without the constant financial drain of Mia's extravagant lifestyle, my savings accounts rebounded with incredible speed. I poured my energy into my career. My firm promoted me to Director of Financial Strategy, a position that came with a substantial salary increase and a beautiful new corner office. Spring arrived, and with it came Caleb and Sarah's wedding. It was a beautiful, intimate ceremony at a vineyard just outside the city. I stood next to Caleb as his best man. When I handed him the rings, he looked at me with a depth of gratitude that words couldn't adequately express. We had survived a hurricane together, and our friendship was stronger than iron. At the reception, I gave a toast. I didn't mention the darkness. I only spoke about light, about the power of finding someone who builds you up instead of tearing you down. I looked around the room, surrounded by people who loved and respected me, and I felt a profound sense of peace. Mia was not invited. Mia was essentially a ghost. But ghosts have a funny way of trying to haunt you when they run out of energy to feed on. A few weeks after the wedding, on a quiet Tuesday evening, my phone chimed with an email notification. It bypassed my blocked contacts because she had created a brand new email address. The subject line read, "I miss us." I stared at the screen. The sheer, unadulterated nerve of it was staggering. I clicked open the email, more out of morbid, clinical curiosity than anything else. "Leo," the email read, "I know I am not supposed to contact you because of the order, but I had to try. I have been doing so much thinking. My life is a disaster. My father completely cut me off. I am living in a tiny basement apartment in the bad part of town. I had to get a job working retail at a mall. My feet hurt every day. I miss our home. I miss the dinners you used to cook. I realize now that I took your stability for granted. The men out here are awful. Nobody treats me the way you did. I have changed, Leo. I have been in therapy. I am willing to forgive you for the police incident and the harsh legal tactics if you are willing to just meet me for coffee. We have history. Please, love, Mia." I read the email twice. I sat back in my chair and laughed. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It was a genuine, full-belly laugh that echoed in the quiet, peaceful house. She was willing to forgive me. She was willing to forgive me for stopping her from stealing my money and destroying my best friend's life. She didn't miss me. She missed the comfortable mattress. She missed the limitless credit cards. She missed the ATM. She was suffocating in the real world, and she was desperate to find a host to attach her parasitic self back onto. The old Leo might have felt a tiny pang of guilt for her situation. The old Leo might have drafted a long, angry response detailing her failures. The new Leo simply clicked the block sender button and permanently deleted the email. She did not deserve my anger. She did not deserve a single second of my time. My boundaries were absolute. To celebrate my new promotion and the one-year anniversary of surviving the madness, I decided to do something completely out of character. I looked at the extra money sitting in my account, the exact amount Mia used to spend leasing that ridiculous Porsche every few months. I called my sister, Claire. "Pack your bags," I told her. "We are going to Turks and Caicos. First class. I'm paying." A week later, we stepped off a plane into the glorious, humid embrace of the Caribbean. The water was a shade of impossible electric blue. For 7 days, we lived without a care in the world. We drank rum on the beach at noon. We chartered a private sailboat. We ate fresh seafood until we couldn't move. On the 4th night, we went to a vibrant local beach bar where a live band was playing. The air was thick with music and the smell of salt water. I ordered a drink at the bar, feeling the rhythm of the drums vibrating in my chest. A woman stepped up next to me to order. She had bright, laughing eyes and a warm, genuine smile. Her name was Grace. She was an architect from Chicago, traveling with her friends. We struck up a conversation that flowed easier than water. We talked about art, about our careers, about the beauty of starting over. There was no pretense. There was no demands. Just two adults connecting authentically. Later that night, I asked her to dance. As I spun her around the wooden dance floor under the Caribbean stars, laughing and tripping over my own feet, I realized something incredible. For 5 years, I had believed the lie that I was a boring, inadequate, unlovable man. But spinning under those lights, I felt vibrant. I felt wealthy in the truest sense of the word. I was alive, and I had so much living left to do. It has been 2 years since I packed that suitcase and threw it into the living room. I am 37 years old now. I am sitting in my bright, masculine home, drinking coffee out of a mug Grace bought for me on our last trip together. We are taking things slow, building a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. As for Mia, the last I heard, she had been fired from her retail job and was bouncing between friends' couches, burning bridges wherever she went. The universe has a way of balancing the scales. If you are listening to this right now, and you are sitting in a relationship that makes you feel small, inadequate, or crazy, if you are constantly walking on eggshells in your own home, paying the bills while being treated like a servant, hear my voice. The fear of leaving is a manipulation tactic. They make you believe you cannot survive without them, when in reality, they are terrified they cannot survive without you. You have power you haven't used in years. You have a voice that deserves to be heard. If your partner jokes about disrespecting you, if they cross your boundaries and tell you that you are too sensitive, open the door, pack their bag. Do not wait for the financial theft. Do not wait to find a hidden notebook in the closet. Trust your gut. If it drains your soul, it is not love. I lost a toxic wife, but I gained the entire world. And let me tell you, the trade was worth every single tear. My name is Leo. I survived, I rebuilt, and I am finally wonderfully free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It is never easy to bare your soul to the internet, but if my journey can help just one person find the courage to reclaim their life, then every painful moment was worth it. Have you ever faced something similar with your own family? Have you ever had to draw a hard line to protect your own peace? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey.